Hey guys, thought I'd go live and do a video now that I'm a bit more awake and a bit more comfortable. I think it'd be a good time to just revisit and tell my story again. So I remember, so pardon me if I don't look at the chat so much. I probably will. I probably will later on, near the end of the video. But yeah. So I was 20 years old, and I picked up the book Dianetics at a mall. They had a book cart, and I did the stress test, which I've done to many, many people, and as a staff member. But I did the stress test first time, and I felt attracted to the person giving the stress test. I was an Asian woman. But, I'm young and I'm lonely. At that point, my most vulnerable point was being lonely. And even though, for reasons, I had friends, I had opportunities, but for some reason I was pretty introverted, and I had my reasons for being quiet, for being an introvert, and all those things. And when I was presented with Dianetics as, oh, this is the answer, this will get to the cause of it. I mean, of course it sounds good. And I got the book, and I got my receipt, and I happily went home and started to read. I got up to maybe chapter 2. I did read about the reactive mind, but it was confusing, and hey, thank you, Kathy. And it's so funny. I still get nervous. It's like, what the hell? Okay. When I was home, I was still involved with my friends who I did drugs with, not some hardcore, but not all the time. My friends were not spiritual at all. And it was more just a place to hang. I didn't feel tight with them. I could never really open up with them. And I was a lonely person. I lived in my own world, and when I saw this opportunity, the opportunity was when they wrote me a letter. I know the person who wrote me the letter. I worked with him when I joined staff. What a character. Funny, yeah, but a representative of Scientology and what they promote it is? Hell no. None of them are. But I got a letter, and it simply said, would you like to be an auditor? And I was like, what the hell is that, right? And so I was thinking about it, excited about it, because I had no clue what I wanted to do in life. And at the time, when I graduated high school at 18, I just started working right away. I started working, I think, at 16. I've always worked a full-time job, And I had this anxiety about what am I going to do with myself? What am I going to do with my career? Because I'd see it, my siblings, they did well. I was kind of like the black sheep in a way, where, I was the one with hardcore ADHD and, the onset of, schizoaffective. And I saw that and I was excited. And I liked it because it was independent. Like, ooh, something different, adventurous. And I was a spiritual guy. I loved spirituality because I could feel it. And I loved the concept. I could see it. And I know there's people who can't, or, perceive like that is just imagination. But I don't know, man. I really felt I grasped it. And I would read books before Dianetics. I'd read books about synchronicity and other philosophies. How much of it did I grasp? Some of it. But when I saw that opportunity, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, maybe I can actually do this. So I believe I called and I spoke. Who did I speak to? I'm not exactly sure who I spoke to, but they gave me an appointment. And I was never drove to Boston. I'm living in Massachusetts. And it was a difficult thing because I'm even bad at directions. Like I call it, for my own term, I call it directional dyslexia, where like I have a hard time with directions. And I might go the wrong way or what have you. I'll take a left instead of a right. And I've always had that. So going to Boston was a real trip. It was like I got lost for like 2 hours. I was stuck in Chinatown. Really funny. And so when I finally arrived, I had to park down the street, way down the street. Beacon Street was the street that the org was on. The cult's, building. And at that moment, I remember being very naive, but innocently thinking, wow, I'm going to work for a church. Like, I remember they told me what Scientology is, our star on the letterhead, something like that. And it came up, and I was excited. Like, wow, something spiritual. I'm on a spiritual quest. And again, naive. I'm going to tell you a funny little foreshadow here. Is when I was watching it, one day when I was watching MTV, this was back in 95, I think. 1995, maybe 96. No, 95. I saw an episode, a news clip from MTV by Kurt Loder, and he was talking about Scientology. Is it a cult? And I remember I already had the book, I think, already had favoritism in my mind for what I was reading or what I was pursuing, and I disregarded it. This tells me a lot about my own psyche, is that, when you get attracted to something, you tend to defend it, even when you get warnings. So I'd like for that to be, maybe that would be helpful for anybody else. Just really take a look at things. Especially to the young people who may be listening. So, You know, it's funny looking back too, because you see the details of um, the stress test that was done. And because I drilled it so many times and sold Dianetics books to other people, uh, you know, you just see um, you just see the intricacies of how I was duped. You know, you have what's that? What's the E-meter? You know, the E-meter stress test. Those people who understand. And they just did the. She just did the drill on me. There's nothing special about it, even though at the moment I felt it was special. She asked me like, what's the most that's stressing you in life, or something like that. And the e-meter was fascinating, you know. I was allured by her a bit, and her charm. And I would say all the all the pain in the world, or something like that, because I was again feeling philosophical and spiritual. You know, it was a legit feeling, but it was just, you know, taken as the drill says, you know, find their ruin and, you know, drill home Dianetics. It's all robotic. And yeah, I just felt like saying those details. And so I'm thinking I'm going to a church. I think I'm going to like an actual old school church. I swear to God, like I was thinking of like women in like kind of like church clothing or something, like clean. It's messed up, I know, but like cleaning laundry and shit like that. I was like, wow, man, I'm gonna be like working at a church. This is pretty exciting, and it was for me. This is before I entered. And so I get there, and it's nothing what I think. Nothing. You know, it's got the reception. It's got the open room. It's got some TVs playing videos. It's got people. It's got the registrar office off to the side. You know, which holds about, you know, maybe 4 or 5 desks. And you know, I'd see. I remember seeing somebody sitting. I think his last name was Ferguson, but he was sitting. He left. I remember when he blew. He left because of a big upset. And I can only imagine what that upset is. Gee, that, you know, you've been lied to. But anyway, um, he just seemed really cool. Like he was a middle-aged man. He had a beard. He just looked so comfortable, and I was like, wow, man. Right away, you think if this guy's involved, there's something good here, you know. And I was excited because I saw some hope. I was also excited because excited is maybe not the right word, but I felt good because I felt a chance not to be so distant with my own thoughts and my own feelings that I couldn't share. You know, my friends didn't share it. If I talked about God or I talked about spirituality, it was just like, yeah, you know, they just weren't ready for it. And I just don't see it. And so I finally had like this environment where I could actually play. So, again, I was pretty naive, and they showed me. I remember going downstairs in their basement area to have a cigarette, and Um, it was kind of a really crappy looking area, dirty, and there was a poster on the wall, uh, one of their campaign posters, and I remember seeing this, and it was the first time where I saw Scientology propaganda, and it said it showed a guy. You may remember this for people who are for people who are let me catch my thought here. Hey, thanks, Bender. I appreciate it. And I got out, bro. So the propaganda piece was an illustration, colored, and it showed a guy like this or something, or sitting down at a bus stop, and it said something like, to the extent of like, are people against what you're doing, helping yourself, getting better, you know, there's a way, or something to the extent of, those who are attacking Scientology are wrong, and if you feel that, it's not your fault. That was the main communication I got out of it, and it was a little conflicting because I was like, wow, people really attack it, like, or people think bad about it. Um, but I ended up disregarding it because the person I was talking with, the reg, or the recruit rather, um, he led me to the person who wrote me the letter, who happened to be a registrar. And the guy's like, again, because I know him so well, after being on staff, I just, all that sincerity is gone that I thought he had. Of like, oh yes, I'm the gatekeeper. And that's what he said. You know, uh, this is the way. Now this guy too. I'm just saying it as an example. I'm don't want to compare, but I think he was in Scientology for like 25 plus years, and he was never clear. He never moved up the bridge at all, and that was always alarming. When you saw staff not moving anywhere, I mean, I was in that boat. I could never go up anywhere. Anyway, it's fun to reflect. He just did his drill. He just did his patter, his quote unquote standardness, his standard operations, and mixed with manipulation. You know, that's why I think ARC is fake in a way. It's synthetic because it's a manipulation of affinity. It's a manipulation to bring about something that isn't really there. It's okay to have conversation, but when you willingly say, "Hey, let me add some reality in there," and compliment on his, shirt, or compliment on this, like, you're doing it for your own quiet reasons. These registrars, or these people who sometimes use ARC for, as a tool to befriend somebody, to get their trust. And you say ARC is bullshit. Just be. Just, like, let it be natural. And those three can mix, of course, but that's natural, okay? But when you use it as a manipulation tool, and that's what it is. Whenever I go out body riding back in the day, you gotta use ARC. You gotta try to, get them to trust you, feel comfortable, and you gotta do what you gotta do for that. Um, you gotta say what you gotta say. I remember doing recruitment drills, and these recruitment drills we do as a big staff member group, and we would drill with one another. You got a twin, and it was the same thing. Like you find the prospect looking at a poster, and then it tells you comment on the poster and create ARC. You know what I mean? It's not saying, hey, befriend him, say hello, and be natural. Yeah, it's all do it this way, do it this hypnotic way, this deceiving way, and yeah, it's just a detail I like to share. And I never know, like, if this is going to hit on staff member ears. I hope it does. Or if it's going to hit on people thinking about joining Scientology. Who knows? But these are things to look at. So, I went up into the course room. And it was just weird. I did not expect this at all. They would get me on the Success Through Communication course. And, there were times when I was like, what the fuck is this place? Because I just didn't expect it. I think the most alarming one was when they had to give me a meter check, and I don't know why at that time. I guess it was security. And, I had this really skinny dude. He's cool. He's a really cool guy, but I called him Q-Tip because he had this puffy white hair, and he was skinny and white. And he was a cool dude, though. His name was Richard. And if he's still around, in life here, I pray for him. My thoughts go to him. And he put me in this, like, weird room. No, I was in the corner of qual. I was in the corner of the qualifications area. And it just was so strange. It was just such a strange feeling, and he looked uncomfortable and weird, and he was trying to keep me comfortable, with kind of like fake smiles and shit. Hey, Susan. Hey, thank you. And I remember being like, oh, I should probably go or something like that. I had like feelings of like, I don't know. But because of my imaginary mind, or what I thought I could get out of it, or the hope of not being so lonely, and I stuck with it. And it's and seeing the other people, seeing the other staff members, and seeing like energetic or even older, mature people being involved and being full of action or whatever, really got me that illusion of how it was workable, or there's something here. And all they were doing was really just the TRs. They were doing auditing drills and stuff like that. I had no clue at the time. So, it's really beautiful out. So, I'm living about an hour away at that time. I'm living at my parents' house where I was born, where I grew up. And, you know, I get this, I can be a little scattered, but the crows, though I do love them so, are distracting me. Beautiful crows flying around. So, here's another part that I remember. I remember being on course and doing the STCC, Success Through Communication course, and again, it's strange, but it made me laugh. It made me, it gave me this sense of like something fun to do with other people. I remember the laughter, and hoping that this is going to help me. Um, and I don't know if I got anything out of it. I mean, I think I just got like, hey, I completed the course. Oh my god, and did my communication help? Sure, you learn about how to acknowledge and listen, basics. But it's these beginner courses which get the new people, because there's something fun about it, or there's something logical about it. It's until you get a little further and more invested and sold on these basic courses that, hey, Scientology does work. For example, there'll be a course about financial success. It's so simple. It's so damn simple. But for a person who really doesn't have a grasp of, writing down all his bills and seeing how much money he makes and how much he spends, it might help him out. Okay? How is that spiritual? Matter of fact, those money courses are probably there just to get more money. How can we get this guy to get more money and give it to us? And they'll constantly do that. They'll say like, oh, can you do a flow towards your next course? Can you do a flow towards this? And they'll get any kind of money out of you that they can. So while leaving the course room, leaving for the night, I was still in my army trench coat. I had a dark green army trench coat. I loved it. It was like almost like my Linus blanket. I wore that thing all the time. It kind of indicates some of the traits I had. And I think I looked a little ragged as far as my hair. I think it was a little messy, or I wasn't the most well-kept person in those days. I was Mr. Grunge. I loved Kurt Cobain and all that time, and I kind of had that imprinted in my head too. So I was in that style. But this one lady, she's a powerful lady. She was Indian. She said to me, her name was Mitra, and she said to me, "Hey, you," across the reception area. And I turned around, right, and she's like, you'd make a good staff member. I mean, obviously she's just recruiting. I've been there. I know it's like behind the scenes. She's just recruiting, and she has to, like every other staff member. And she was in HCO, so she had to. And but she was cool. Like she had, I don't know, man. She was very creative. She was a cool person, from my experience. And it impinged, and I was like, "You make a good staff member." I'm like, "Me? Wow!" Like, I'm a I'm a guy who works at temp jobs. I'm a guy who's working at a factory. I'm a guy who feels like he's a loser. You know, um, who has a bunch of ambitions and just never does them. That still happens today. But it's like, um, it was like this really validating thing for me. Like, me? And I took it to heart. And of course, long story short, I signed my first 2.5 year. I was scared as shit, but I did it. So what happens after that, and I might have a couple of little things mixed up in the timeline, but what I just said, and then there was a time when I'm at home and I get a call. And I get a phone call from one of the staff members, Matt. I think it was Matt. And it was wild. He said, "Hey, there's a room available in the rent control department we have, and we need to fill that gap." And he talked to me like this because I think I recently just joined staff, yet I don't have a means really. I'm too far away. And it was during the time of the Golden Age Tech 1, where people were going out to get trained as, robotic auditors and shit. And so I took one of his rooms, one of the guy's rooms. It was fucking awesome. I'm not gonna lie. It was in Cambridge, Mass. It was right kind of past MIT. It was right across from the Middle East restaurant and music, and TT the Bears, which were music venues for like alternative and just garage bands. It was fucking awesome. They had a bar there. I was literally across the street in my apartment complex, and I could live right up on the 3rd floor. I had a big window that overlooked the city of Cambridge. Sure, the walls were shitty, and you could see the brick behind it, but for some reason I liked that look. And I loved the experience of being, of being free like that. It's my first time. First time out. And so I did what I could do as a staff member. I've worked jobs, so I know what that is. And, I'll hear the orders and I'll try to do them. The first time body routing, I got shoved on the ground by a stranger. That was a great impression. I should have left there. But I kind of had that fighting spirit, so it's kind of like, well, I'll show them. And what happens during the time of being on staff for as long as I have, or even public, I just speak from my own experience, is that you get introduced to a lot of Scientology lore. A lot. And you're made to believe, as a staff member, as an auditor, which I never was, that you are the most important people on the planet. And again, it's that illusion of everybody else really into it that got me. Because you're like, hey, it must be real. I remember my ED at the time. She passed away from cancer. She was an OT8. Larry Smith. Mary Smith was the first ED I had. Dude, she was intense. Okay, really, really intense. Like she was the captain of the ship, and she was playing for blood. She would yell at other executives. She really felt she was the leader of this ship, and we're saving the fucking planet. And she's, you know, I'm guessing in her 40s, maybe 30s, I don't know. But, she ended up leaving. And she ended up getting her cancer again. I think one of her attestations was like, hey, my cancer left. But it came back and it killed her. I remember the day when Mary Smith, last time I saw her, I was holding reception. And years have gone by since she was the ED. And she came in, she hadn't seen her in years. And she didn't look happy, she looked straight-faced, she looked kind of a little grim. And she said, hi, Malcolm, and she was doing some kind of cycle with, I don't know, with something. She was doing a cycle with probably either OSA or HCO. And, I don't know what that was, but I can assume and kind of theorize that it was about her cancer. Or maybe that she wanted to get the fuck out of Scientology. Top secret. I don't know. But she thought she was doing the right thing. And I hope she came to her senses. In the end. It is what it is. And that intensity of Mary Smith scared the shit out of me, because there were moments, especially on staff meetings. I hated staff meetings. Like, I was already introverted. Never mind, I gotta stand in front of a group I don't know, who are all fucking militant, and are showing their stats and sweating, and talking about all the details they're going to do to reverse it. And now I gotta do that? Like, I hated it, man. I was like, oh my god. And I remember one time leaving, not going to the staff meeting. Maybe I was in doubt, probably, natural. I don't like to use those terms. I want to stay away from that. Like, I was in doubt. That's a conditioned term. I got a lot of... It'd be nice to just clean up all the terms and shit. The more I talk, the more I can just kind of, vomit out all those mechanics. So, I was probably on the fence. I'm sure I was. Like, fuck this. This is too much for me. And I didn't like it. So I remember not going to the staff meeting. I stayed in my apartment. And I remember getting a call from my executive director. His name is Graham. I hope he's doing okay. I hope he's out. He was he was a strong zealot, just like all of us were. We're all zealots. And I just hope he's safe now. Or if he's still in and he sees me, hello. I'm free now. I'm with Jesus. So, he calls me and he uses that, like, authoritative thing of, like, you need to be here. Staff meeting is going to start. You need to be here. I'm sweating bullets, man. I'm like, oh shit. I was about 15 minutes away or so. We'd just take the train. or the bus. And, I finally get there. I go upstairs, and the staff meeting's going on. And it's in this small room up on the fifth floor. Mary's there, and all the other guys, the higher ranking, staff members like the LRH com and this and that. And I don't know what I even look like. I had this idea, like I looked pretty, like, unkept. I wish I had some photos back there. And when I say that, I'm not saying like, the scraggly beard and shit, but maybe my hair needed a haircut, maybe like my clothes are too big or I needed ironing. I don't know. There was something about me. It's the effects of the drugs I did and the mentality I had of being a grunge person. Oh, and I smoked a lot of cigarettes too. I smoked about a pack to 2 packs a day, mainly for anxiety and, I remember going in that room and just the tension, dude. It was such a horrible feeling. It was one of my first, like, horrible feelings. And I felt that control. And I was subdued by it. That control got me. And I gave them authority because of their titles and their methods of communicating to me. Today I obviously see it. I see it as a complete role-playing game. It's nothing's real about it. Just what we think, just what it's agreed upon. And, these roles mean nothing. These roles are devious. Like, they're deception. Take the role of a registrar. Any registrars or ex-registrars listening, you know what I'm talking about, man. Manipulation. But you're doing it for the greatest good. It's just not true. Let me think. 10 years plus. And events were a big one. Like, I hated the events. I think like every other staff member hated the fucking events. Because they take you on your free time and you have to go set up the event. You gotta, flag was here and shit. And it was very, very stressful. Very stressful as a young staff member. But again, you felt the consequences if you didn't. And the weird part about this is like I could have left at any time when I look back. My family was an hour away. I wasn't talking to them, really. I'd visit them on the weekend sometimes. But I'd just be stuck on the internet or something like that. Again, to myself. And so what happens, I was saying this a little bit earlier, what happens when you get into a Scientology environment like that, what happens to me was you just get really saturated with all of this, like, deep Scientology knowledge that isn't made for new people. And for example, there were books that just really got me jazzed. Is the book Have You Lived Before This Life? Just that concept, I was like, oh wow, very attractive. And you read about it, and he's basically, Lafayette's confirming it's true. And so you see all these other Scientologists and adults and everything, and they believe it's true. And they say it's the e-meter. And, it's like this truth comes because you see it around you. You see others really grasping it. talking about it. And I was really hooked on that stuff. I remember the Ron Mags. There was a Ron Mag where talking about past lives. I loved that one. You know, it really just gave you like this sense of I don't know how to. It would put you above everybody else because you're the only one who knows. Bullshit. Only a small group of Scientologists who've actually like come to those realizations of past lives and this, you know, of whole track things. You know, we listen to the lectures. Um, we talks about some crazy ass science fiction about our past that everyone believes in, and you know, everyone in the room. And I'm listening, and I believe in it because why not? I'm fully for it. And then that's where you really get the purpose or the drive to do what you're doing, because you're like, we do come back over and over and over and over and over. I am gonna come back, and Scientology, we're gonna make our house clean. We're gonna clean up this house so when we come back, it's in better condition. You know, and that was really hitting home. But every Scientologist really believed, from like the flag executives, the free winds executives coming to our work, all these things. You know, and if you didn't think that, you were counterintensive. You had counterintention, and it was looked down upon and quashed. You know, from my experience, because you're a staff member, man, you should know better. Blah 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 blah. You're not a public who gets pampered. You're not a public who gets, you know, babied and milked for money. You know, you're a public. You're supposed to be on the ground doing all the hard stuff for little pay, but with purpose. Because your reward will be in the end. It's much like, you know, other religions, where your reward will come in the end by your works. And that's what Scientology promotes to these people who've been in for a long time. This is what I've seen. It's like, one of the big ones too that got me were the factors. You know, the origin of the universe, the origin of everything. And I remember being on security shifts, you know, those who were on staff understand what I'm talking about. You know, we'd have to stay overnight watching the building to make sure nobody fucks with it. You know, because we're so important, and the reactive mind in the world is telling it to attack it. You know, they did live in a Matrix kind of world, like the movie, as in Agent Smith was everything else. Agent Smith was that reactive, all those implants and things set up in an individual where they react and destroy anything that's going to make them free. That's what Scientology would promote and has talked about. And it's such a lie. But we would call these people wogs. We would call these people defamatory things. We'd make fun of it. We were the high horses. And this is why you see these Scientologists all fucking high horse. Because they think they're elite. And they're some of the dumbest people. Spiritually, I'm sorry. I've been deceived. You believe in some really outlandish things that just are not true. So, I was really on board because I felt that past life drive. I loved that concept. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. I wake up every day and I'm like, I'm this character. I'm just this body for a brief time. Let's go. But I'd still, run into financial problems. You still run into all the physical problems like life has, no matter who you are. And there was no demonstration of OT powers, nothing like that. I said it before, but I just remember this real clear example of an OT 8 duping me or making a mockery of my belief, his own beliefs. And it really opened up, when I reflect, I could see why this OT was in on it, as if almost like it's fake. And I said this story before, but I was doing the purification rundown, meaning I was running it. I was the Purify C, which I hated. But, I'd sit, we had a very small area, and I'd be sitting on a chair. And he walked by the area, and he was kind of like running up the stairs or something. I don't know if running, but, And I don't know how it came up, but he said, hey, you believe I could change my hair to white? All white? And he's one of great honor. He's an OTA on staff, bro. Yeah, that was a fucking honor. And I'm like, yeah, I believe you can. And he laughed, and he went back upstairs. I was puzzled by the laughter, but when I look back and I go, he's probably just confirming, is this guy duped or what? Like, why would you, as a official of TA, say something like that? And what's even fishier, I don't have any conclusions, but I was on security one night, and I get a call, late. I can't tell you what time. Our shift started, I think, late too, but it was late at night, and it was from a old Scientologist. This guy was old, and they were doing some kind of handling for him. I don't remember what it was, but the DSA or ethics was with him. They got him out of his apartment that he was in his whole life. It was kind of sad, He was really out of it. Maybe he was coming down with something. Maybe he was getting dementia. Maybe he was getting some kind of effect. And he calls in the middle of the night, and I answer, His name was Russ. I'm sure he's not with us anymore. Russ Seibert. He was a good man. A gentle old man, but he believed to what I believed. And he says to me that, I don't want to say the guy's name. He says to me about the OTA, he says, he's a plant. He's a plant. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, how does that make any sense? I know what a plant is. Like, how could he be a plant? And I would like to hear some feedback on that from people who kind of know what I'm talking about. Like, is it that this OTA was fake and he was just in the org for whatever reason? You know, reasons for management, maybe upper lines. I don't know. But he says he's a plant. And I didn't quite know what he meant. But I did my job and I wrote it up in a knowledge report. And, you know, who knows what they did after that. So you have these two incidences of this OTA being called plant, legit or not, and then you have this time where he makes me believe he can change his hair at will. You know? So yeah, I wonder if there's any plants out there. Like, does anybody else know about Scientology staff plants that are on the side of Scientology? Or shed any light on that? It was strange. It's still a mystery, a little. And all through this time, I'm suffering through financial stress, and I'm living off of granola bars, tuna fish, English muffins, cigarettes, and coffee. With my paycheck, I could get 4 granola bars for $1 and a large coffee. And my pack of cigarettes at the time was like maybe a few bucks. I don't think the taxes hit in yet at the time. So, whenever I got into auditing, I liked auditing. In reality, auditing just gave me a chance to create delusions that I would believe. And when you're in auditing, when you you get to create this reality that you think is real based on your past lives. And these past lives would come up, and because of the validation of that mechanical device, the e-meter, you gave that authority. You gave the auditor authority to determine what was real or not real for you in a very covert way. And that was a big way of the mind control as well, where you're in session. Every Scientologist here, you know, in the communities knows what I'm talking about, I'm sure, where, you know, you're kind of excited, you know past lives exist, and you know they come up in session, but here you are in session, and you get asked a question. And when you come up with something fictional, and you get a validation from the auditor, like your needle is floating, or, you know, um, even when they invalidate what you say. Like you could say something that's true, and they'll just disregard it in a way and say, "Is there an earlier similar?" And you'd have to almost disregard what you did think. And I would come up with some wild shit, just like other Scientologists. I'd come up with some stuff about. I remember one time I was in a Western setting as a cowboy, but a criminal. And I went in a bank and I shot up a couple people and I took the money and I ran. And the cops chased me and they gunned me down right in the head. Shit like this, man. And you're like, wow, that's real. So you think you are expanding as a spiritual being. Like, I never knew that happened. Wow. And that's nothing being a cowboy. I'm talking, you can go way back and come up with some really fucked up shit. Okay? People say there were spaceships and ran a whole crew, and some people say there were vegetables, and, it's all kinds of shit. There was this one time in auditing, I can't tell you exactly where it started, but I got this concept that I was a past life, clear. At first it was clear, and I'd talk about it in session, and my needle would flow. Oh my God, I felt so validated. I wasn't validated as clear, but I felt I was validated because the auditor or nobody else said, no, you're not. They just let me talk and go into the next session. But it's like whenever I went in session, I would just totally go off on that. I would just think about this, and then it went deeper to, I think it was an OT7. And it's the same thing of nobody says anything. And I'm riding this illusion, this delusion. And I'm feeling more powerful, so to speak. It puts you in this higher state of relationships with everyone around you, because you're like, even if it's not malicious or anything, you're just like, wow, I'm a past life OT and I have a responsibility. Look what really happened. This is real. Scientology works. It saves you from the pit traps of life after life. I have proof. I know. And then you talk to other people and they say the same shit. But what the funny part is, Lafayette made a very strong rule that people are not supposed to discuss their auditing with anybody else, except maybe their auditor or ethics or whatever. They cannot discuss it. It's forbidden. That's a big X. And, why? He says you can get invalidated. No shit. I mean, no shit, you're gonna get invalidated. Because it's a lie. But, they want you to just keep on going on the track you're on. And keep on buying into the self-delusions as they feed it to you and feed it to you. And, it didn't shake, this whole thing of like me being an OT7. Now, at that time, I was married. I had a child. She was a Scientologist in the Scientology family. She's a second generation. And, we bonded. We actually did love each other at the time when we started. We're both Scientologists, young, and loving loving life, the whole track and shit. Anyway, um, it was a long time ago now, which feels good. Um, but I literally thought, oh, and I was also on the internet with other Scientologists, with other OTs, and I found that alluring. I felt connected. Like, I'm an OT, so, and I don't mean to say that like proudly, but like I'm an OT, like in my heart, and these are other OTs that I'm talking with, and it just felt so good. I felt like I'm one of them, even though I wasn't. I didn't do shit on the bridge. Not really. I did my up to TRs and objectives. I didn't do any fucking auditing. I mean, I did, but on the bridge, I didn't even do my drug rundown. But here I am in OT fucking 7 with no handling. Nobody's telling me shit. And it made me do, having that framework made me do some cruel things. Like, for example, I remember after having our child and everything, I wasn't going to be on staff. And what did I do? I joined a 5-year contract. You know, my executive director, Graham, he was like giving me the whole, how important it is to have you, you know, fighting the good fight, because this is the only chance we have, kind of bullshit. You know, hard sells, what they call it. And I'm telling you how I felt already. I was like, shit, you're right. I want to be part of that. And it really created a rift in the marriage, and it made me more serious. It made me a bit against her, because I was like, she has a bunch of CI, counterintention they would use as a term. And, you know, how come, you know, my ex, how come she's not like as gung-ho, blah, blah, blah. Obvious reasons, you know, the problems it created financially, mainly time-wise, and in mood. But I felt I had to go. I reached a point where I felt I had to leave, because I'm an OT7. I have more to do. I have things I need to do. I'm playing a bigger game. It's all bullshit. That's the mentality. And no matter how effective I was, no matter how ineffective I was, no matter what kind of a pain in the ass I was, I did believe that. And I remember thinking even like, I'm going to go to New York and start becoming an auditor. And I had all these grand dreams because I was an OT7 at Scientology. And it drove me for quite a while. Even in the, when we divorced and we did marriage counseling, Scientology marriage counseling, I brought it up. You know, I was 100% certain about it. And the meter showed it too. You know, fuck that meter. You don't have to believe that meter. It's such a deceptive device. It makes you believe things that just are not true. And it was pretty fucked up when, you know, one of the hardest things I ever had to do was tell her that I wanted the divorce, but having to leave my child at 5. it was so difficult because I'm going through like a psychosis. I'm thinking I'm supposed to. And when I leave, I come to Florida here, and that's when things start to destimulate. And I'm disconnected from all that. And, I'm in the real world now, and I have a real job. Real life is coming in, and these delusions are kind of fading. And that's when I would be constantly troubled inside, like, what are these feelings? How come I'm not doing all these OT things, that I said I wanted to do? And then I met my wife, my current wife, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And she really helped me see the deception I was in, even without her knowing. She told me she was Christian, and as a Scientologist, we mocked Christianity very bad, and understandably so now that we know Scientology is based on demonology and based on the dark arts, based on hypnotism. Nothing good, it steals your soul. And we know that. It steals your soul. It stole my soul. I was trapped in that delusion for a long time. And I remember, I loved her. I fell in love with her. And it was time to look up. Does Scientology go along with Christianity? That was the first crack I did into finding out the truth about Scientology. It's because I loved my wife, and I wanted to know if I would be compatible with her as a Scientologist and she being a Christian. Let me tell you, the first article I got online was very thorough and very eye-opening. It did refer to references of scripture and also references of others, and it was pretty clear they were not compatible. And that was like the first kind of big crack. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I find out more about her side. I find out more about her beliefs. I find out more about the sense of God, the Creator, and it just kind of flooded me, and I came back. I felt like that was truth. And it took time, obviously, throughout the years. I've had my trials and my tests and my adventures of perceiving the world, just like we all do. And sincerely, I have been freed from that spiritual trap. There were a lot of troubles in between here and there. Them trying to get me back in. Other Scientologists from online trying to get me back in. It almost worked, but didn't. And I really don't want other people to fall into what I did. And if you have, I urge you to look. Oh, yes, of course. I know who my child is, yes. And she's not a Scientologist. And, um, but she hasn't, she's been marinated in it, because of the mom. But she's not. And I wish her to really prosper. I wish her to have her own spiritual walk with herself. It's hard to describe because again it's something we've all been to or been through. Um, what's funny is that I'm going to be 51, and my daughter is 20, and that's when I got into Scientology. 20, and you know I lost all those 20s. I could have been on a career path. I could have been doing something, else to prosper my life. I could have been in a company instead. I wasted all those years. I don't have any skills from that. Very little. And it's one of the reasons why afterwards I just grabbed a job and hung on to it. You know, I also have reasons why I don't take more responsibility. I have schizoaffective disorder. I have a hard time. I get overwhelmed. And I also get triggered, and I think there's some triggers of staff still there. Yeah, I'm just a youngin', yeah. It feels good though being in my 50s. It's an interesting stage. Um, but I couldn't feel good if it wasn't for my family. I couldn't feel good if it wasn't for my wife. I would be who knows where. If I was still stuck there, it's a nightmare. It's a fucking nightmare. Hey, Power Lives, I'm glad to have you here. You mind if I call you Brad? Hey, and also, yeah, if you guys have questions, please ask. Because when you give me questions, you give me something to talk about. Let's see. I found this community, about a year and a half ago, something like that. And it really started to bloom. And I popped in. You can see all my cringy videos, but some of them aren't so bad. But, it's just part of the process of me getting out there, getting the crust off. You know, hey Jojo, you're awesome. Glad to see you. Hmm. Okay. Well, thank you, Jojo. So, Mama Main, um, how do you deal with the past traumas of the situation counseling or other mod- modalities. Well, I'm not sure what modality is, but I'll tell you this. One of the problems I still have is time. Anything dealing with time constraint, I'm fucking triggered. I can handle it, but man, if we're like, I gotta go, it's getting close. I get the anxiety that I never used to have. Being a staff member, you get that anxiety hardcore with time. And, oh, okay. I wish I could do other forms of therapy. I will. It's just a matter of time, money. It's coming. And I would love to do some just regular counseling. I would love that. And it's coming. Also, being here with this group and with all you awesome people, um, you let me counsel myself. You let me talk. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the time constraints it's still a trigger. Um, I'm trying to think of the others. The past trauma as well is kind of, because I've got a faith in God and Lord, and I personally feel it. It's real to me. I think there is a spiritual truth. I do think there's a good and an evil. I think that we're not the highest forms of entity in this world. See, Scientology didn't make me throw away spirituality, where it has for some people. And for good reason for them. They have their reasons. But for me, I always felt the Lord. And I went back to Him, through the help of my wife. I was talking to God before Scientology. I would write about God in my journals and diaries, and I would always think about it. Again, mentioning it to my friends, they'd be like, whatever. And it wasn't the Christian God so much, it was just the sense of love and sense of beingness that you could feel of a creator. That really helped me cope. It still helps me cope because I know what it is. It's Scientology's evil. I see it, and that's helped a lot. Like, I'm not stuck with everything. I'm not stuck with all the trauma. Some of the trauma has definitely subsided. Um, Thanks to the Lord and thanks to my wife and family. Yep. Yeah, man. That was Scientology, always, and on purpose, to keep you off your toes, to keep you chained to them. Sleep deprivation, things like that. We'd work crazy hours and we'd have to save the planet. We'd have to make quotas. We'd have to call people at 10 at night, asking them for the 30th time if they're going to come to a fucking event. Yeah, that was traumatic too. Like, imagine you have to ask somebody if they're going to come to a Scientology event, and the first thing they say is, unfortunately, I can't. I got something to do. Well, deep down, they're probably like, fuck that. They're just going to recruit me and try to get money out of me, But, you got to try. You got to do your hard sell. You have a pattern, a sheet of exactly what to say. And then you can add your own synthetic ARC to try to get along and get him to feel better, even though it's not a true feeling, a true state. It's like, and then you gotta call him. You call him again, and it's the 7th time, and the guy's like, "You already called me, man." And you have this whole list, and everyone has notes on it, and you got these like just stacks of paper with names and numbers on it, and that shit was traumatic. They made you do hard sell against your will, and it was uncomfortable. How they do it against your will is with superiority, or somebody higher than you commanding you to, or telling you to, and you felt obligated to because everyone else, it's a very serious activity. Thank you, Mama. I'm just going to read what you say. I have to play with my phone here and see if I can figure out what to do. Okay. I'm trying to post the things that you say. And again, I'm just... Oh, well. So, yeah, I would wash dishes. She would check them. And if I had one not perfect, she would take every dish from the cupboard and just have to wash them all in a certain amount of time. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I assume that you got through it. I hope so. Oh man, I'm sorry, yeah. I know that feeling. Even as a child, my father was pretty strict on cleaning. He was manic as well. Bipolar. And his manics on cleaning, I got pretty fucking strict. It became pretty uncomfortable. Well, I do have to say I've got 5 minutes, 5% left on my battery. It's been nice to talk. I want to talk more. That's really good, Mama. These experiences do make us. If we can steer the ship, that's good. You can have the crashing waves, but if you can steer that ship to where you want it to go, calm waters or whatever, good company makes all the difference. It's okay to have trauma, and it's even better to have people to talk to, people who can understand. I know, and I want to thank you for being here and listening to me. So I'm going to end off. I got to end off because I only got 5% left. So you guys, do you have any questions you want to throw at me right now? Yes. And I'm glad you chose that route. Sometimes it goes the other way for psychological reasons. Where, I'm glad you chose the harmonious way. Yeah, I've thought that. It's best if I talk when I have some sleep and I'm awake. I sometimes try to talk at night and I just flop all over the place. I got nothing to say. Or if I get into a conversation with somebody, maybe we could team up and be, on a video discussion, whoever it is, ex-Scientologist, you know. That'd be fun. I'd talk more that way too. But hey, wow, I've been talking the whole time. I haven't had too much dead air, and yeah, it feels good to say it again. Wow, 100th video. You know, even if I have like, you know, I am a humble person when it comes to this stuff, and even if I have like 50 people watch this, you know, or 10, it's cool. It's cool with me, man. It feels validating to know I can say things that others understand. And this is a great group to be in. I want those who are ex-Scientologists who are meek about it to take a step towards talking. I would love to talk. I could do interviews again with any ex-Scientologists or in that nature. Ask you questions of your experiences. We probably have some experiences that we can share. And I love to talk to staff members, ex-staff members, because that's where I'm from. Kathy, those are nice words. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very thankful to have you here. Yeah, that's true, Kathy. It's true. And you're always learning, you know. At 50, I feel like I have a grip. Do I? I don't know. Alright, unfortunately, I've got to go. Create a good day. Feel the good in things. Thanks, Jojo. And I love your song. You know, I never forgot about that. I just never got together to make an intro or anything. I need to do more content. I feel if I'm going to have an intro, I need to do more content. And I feel like I should be doing the interviews I used to do. I can find the right time to do it too and everything. Okay, so yeah. I love it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I love you all. Take care. I will see you again, either in the chat or on video. And if you have any questions, think about it. And you can always ask me. Or if you ever want to do a video together, you can always email me. My email is my name, the Holy Road at Gmail.